I just had a question. I'm reading a passage here in Atlas. It's a consciousness passage. Says a consciousness conscious of nothing but itself is a contradiction in terms. And I'm wondering why, what the refutation is to people who say that you can have a conscious which exists, which is only conscious of itself. So I wonder if you can dig into that a little bit.
Well, see, how shall we do that? Do you want to play the guy who's saying that? And we should have a conversation, or how?
Well, the rejection that comes into my mind is just simply that somebody would say, well, what if the consciousness is conscious, of itself? And there's nothing else to be conscious of, and it says here that that's a contradiction if it's conscious of nothing. So
what
want to dig into that.
I mean, I'm trying to project the state of such a consciousness. So how do you know you're conscious?
Well, you can perceive the things around you and tell that you exist within some sort of
and then you kind of can differentiate yourself from them. So you perceive the things around you, and then you notice yourself as something distinct from them that's doing the perceiving.
Yeah.
Right. So like I can close my eyes, but they're still there to touch, and I can take my hands away and I can still see them. And there's them and there's me, and I'm the one having the experience of them. If there was nothing but you, how would you even identify yourself as conscious? And what would it mean to be conscious? And what we mean by it is, we see the world and then we notice ourselves as what's seeing the world. If we didn't have that distinction, I don't think we could even have the idea of consciousness.
So essentially what you're saying it's meaningless to say that there's a consciousness which can look on itself because it can't, I don't know how to word it. It's kind of tough to put it into words.
I mean, it wouldn't be what we mean by consciousness. What we mean by consciousness is awareness.
Something that refers to something.
Awareness is inherently relational. It's like saying there's nothing to the left that's not to the left of anything else. It's just to the left of itself. It's so leftist. It's a self-contained left that's prior to anything to the right. There's no right. It's just left. And what's it left of itself? That just doesn't make sense. Left isn't a word that works like that. And consciousness isn't a word that works like that. And that's not just a fact about the word. It's what we mean by the word. You couldn't get left unless there are two things and they're in a relationship.
Something to refer to, yeah.
Yeah, and left refers to one role in that relationship. Well, likewise, consciousness refers to one role in that relationship. Now, once you have something that's conscious of something, there has to be something for it to be conscious of for there to be a consciousness at all. Then the consciousness itself is a second thing that it might be conscious of. But until there's something for it to be conscious, it doesn't exist in the first place. And I don't think we could understand what we meant by it in the first place.
Okay.
And by the way, this point isn't some point that only objectivists have pointed out. The way in which Descartes and others in the early modern period thought of consciousness as some self-contained thing that might just be aware of itself and so forth, came under sustained attack later, including by a lot of Kantians and post-Kantians who I think are guilty of the primacy of consciousness in another way. But this kind of point, you'll find a lot of contemporary philosophers, that the idea of just some self-contained thing that's aware but not aware of anything doesn't make sense. It's not like all philosophers think that, but it's not an unusual view.
Okay, thanks.